don't know what time it is. Later in the day, for sure. And I'm going to take Sarah for a walk up this old road in a little bit. Well, in a couple hours. Right at very last light. I know there's some elk down here. In the meantime, I've had to go make a big, huge game plan today and time myself how long it would take to get the quad into this one particular place. So I got to approach this mountain from the right side of the wind to have a good crack at this one big elk that I know is in there for tomorrow. So we did that today. And I think I'm going to take Sarah for a walk down this road in the last half hour light. And coincidentally, this is the road I lost my knife on a couple years ago. Holy cow, is there ever a bunch of no-see-um bugs around here? Crazy. Anyway, so while we're waiting for the sun to go down some more, you know what I'm going to do? And there's lots to do. Listen to this. Actually, I gotta go get some bug spray. These suckers are nasty. Hold on a minute. Alright. Have a deep sandwich, you little bastards. Now, I wonder what's going on in the real world. I haven't really been staying in touch with anybody or anything. I wonder what's going on in the real world today. Not the real world. I mean, maybe I should say the so-called civilized world. I don't know. Before I start babbling, which is easy to do. Like, this is red. Let me know if a big bull elk walks behind me. Three generations of Bigfoot stories is the title of this email being shared with us today. I'd like to start off by saying thank you for the good work you're doing. I don't have any degrees or stuff like that, but I'm a hard-working man that takes care of my family. The first story was told to me by my grandfather when I was about 7. Excuse me. I'll never forget his words. He passed away in the late 90s. His story started off in Tampa, Florida, at Lettuce Lake Park in the 70s. My great-grandfather loved my grandfather loved the outdoors and would take solo camping trips often. He said one morning he was fishing a small creek in the park. He had 3 fishing poles, supplies, and camping gear. As he is fishing this creek, he hears footsteps on the other side of the creek walking towards the water. The creek is about 20 feet wide. We have lots of palmetto trees in Florida, so he couldn't see what was coming his way. What he said stepped out, shocked him to the core. A 5-foot bipedal ape man stepped out, not even fazed by him being there, kneeled down and started drinking water with his hand to his mouth. My grandfather jumped up, ran off, and left all his fishing and camping gear, never to return. He didn't do much camping after that. Wow. The second encounter involves my grandmother. This took place on the Florida-Georgia line. My grandmother was riding on a charter bus, heading back to Florida from a church function. The bus was riding down Interstate 75 southbound. This encounter happened in broad daylight around 3 p.m. Grandma said they passed a cow field on her left, and standing under a fallen tree was a Bigfoot, just standing there looking at the cars go by. Half of the ladies on the bus saw it. They were shocked and speechless. They never told anyone out of fear. The last encounter happened to me. My name is Leonard. I'm African American, and I don't mind you sharing my information. It was July 5th, 2005 when my encounter happened. I'll never forget that day. A hurricane had passed through Port St. Lucie. A friend of mine, I hope I pronounced that right, Lucie. Probably not, with my luck. A friend of mine is a roofing contractor, and as me, did I want to travel... Sorry, there's a few typos, no big deal. And asked me, did I want to travel to Miami to make some extra money tarping rooftops? I said, sure, let's do it. I am an outdoors type of guy, and I love to fish and hunt, just like my father and great-grandfather. We drove to the Everglades one day early to do some camping. Before we get down to business, we rented 2 little cabins, one for me and one for him. They were only one-man cabins. We were about a mile off of any main road. There's a blast of wind. It was about 9:30 p.m. when this happened. I was sitting in my friend's cabin, drinking beer, and after too few beers, I'm heading to my cabin. It was only 25 yards away, and I hear footsteps walking towards the road I was walking down. I thought it was a man with night vision goggles on, but as this thing got closer to me, I could see it wasn't a man. It was a 7-foot-tall female Bigfoot. She was only 20 feet away from me. She started screaming. I don't know what happened to me. I felt like I was put into a trance. I could not move. Then, if that wasn't bad enough, she mind spoke to me and said, "I'm looking for my baby." Then she kept walking away from me and screaming. I snapped out of whatever happened to me and got my ass in the cabin. I got under my bed and waited for daylight. My buddy I was camping with heard the screaming also. We left that campground at 5 a.m. We waited until we could check into a regular hotel in the city. We made a few bucks tarping roosts that day, but we never told anyone what happened that night. And as I'm writing this, I'm reliving that night. So if I left out anything, I'm a little nervous. I still fish almost every day. It took almost 5 years before I could go back in the woods again. I'd never been camping again. Thank you. God bless you, brother. God bless you too, my man. There you go, you guys. A couple more members of the club in no return. Didn't ask for it. They're here, and his family. Screaming and looking for their kid. I guess that probably makes sense, doesn't it? Appreciate your share, man. Appreciate your honesty and your time you spent to donate to us. It's a big gift. Appreciate it. Hi, Steve. I am including here a few encounters related to me from the infamous Bridgewater Triangle that I got firsthand from the witnesses who do not wish to be named, that they thought I should share their encounters. Thankfully, you do provide this forum in which such encounters can be shared without judgment. I'll also enclose a picture of a print from one of these encounters. Here are two of the stories related to me. First encounter. In late September 2018, two gentlemen were in the town of Middleborough, Massachusetts on Pine Street doing some metal detecting in old cellar holes from the colonial era, looking for artifacts. Being only one town away from Plymouth, Massachusetts, there are a considerable number of these old homestead field stone cellars, along with endless miles of stone walls that once bore out the borders of farms and fields that have since now returned the woodland state they once were before the area was settled. These men were traveling up Pine Street and saw a stone with a plaque on it. Figuring it may have been some form of marker to some kind of historical site, they pulled the truck over and grabbed the metal detectors and proceeded to walk to the rock to read what the plaque had to say, in hopes of getting information about the land they were on. Once they got to the rock and read the info, which told them whose land it was and the story of it, they were suddenly shocked by a loud scream that both individuals described as way beyond what any man or animal could produce. In their words, it was at such a volume and pitch that it vibrated their chest. And it was close, real close. They heard large tree snaps and stomping. It should be noted these gentlemen were both former Marines with combat experience, and they related to me, quote, "I'm not afraid of any man or beast, but this thing made us run like scared little kids," end quote. It should be noted here that where this occurred, southeast Massachusetts, there are no large animals like moose or any other animal with large lungs to make such a large noise. And there are a few, very few black bears, but they are only the size of a border collie, if even that big. The largest animal, well, officially anyway, in this part of the state is white-tailed deer, and it surely was not one of those. No doubt. Second encounter. In the summer 2019 in the town of Bridgewater, Massachusetts, a gust of wind here, hold on a minute. Fall colors are beautiful here, aren't they? if this wind's going to settle down or not. I don't know if the GoPro's picking. I'm using a GoPro right now. I don't know if it's picking up the wind or not. In the summer 2019, in the town of Bridgewater, Massachusetts, a group of individuals gathered at a location called Indian Bridge. There were several individuals there who were local ghost hunters, accompanied by a film crew to shoot part of a documentary about the hauntings of the area and the bridge, which was a native construction over a small river, was the site of several encounters with a, quote, ghost horse-drawn wagon/carriage, unquote, that has been seen careening across the stone bridge over the years. The location is within the Hockomock Swamp, which translates to English as, quote, the place where spirits dwell, end quote, by the local Wampanoag tribe. Well, out of the location, several folks were getting an uneasy feeling as if being watched, and strange sounds were heard but could not be identified as to who or what had made them. A few of the people were getting upset and wanted to leave. One individual wanted to go behind a set of bushes to relieve himself and heard some commotion near where he stood. He stepped around the grove of trees to find a very fresh print in the mud, only feet from where he was. This person is well over 6'7", and he said the print made his size 15 shoe look like a kid's. I have closed the photo they took and have... Hold on a minute, these bugs are getting me. Sorry. I have enclosed the photo they took and have spoken with all the other witnesses personally who saw the print and can confirm it was as pictured. A downpour of rain occurred before a cast could be made, but the stories of the witnesses have been documented. Thank you for what you do, Steve, and I can make available to you at any time copies of the statements of the witnesses and all supporting data related. Should it be okay with you, I will share the encounters from my weird little spot on this mud ball we call home every couple of weeks to show the folks that live in my area that you're not crazy, that these things happened around here too. Well, to be factual, some of the earliest reports of wild men come from here long before the rest of the country was settled by colonists. But that is for another email. Thanks for all you do, and so sorry to hear about Mr. Macaroni. This is an older emails that have been missed, all right? Your ever humble servant, Matt Moniz, M-O-N-I-Z. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name, my friend. And here is a photo of a print. It's hard to make out, but I can make it out looking at it like this. I don't know if that's going to work on here or not. We're going to try it out. Another typical classic footprint. Matt, I absolutely appreciate you emailing. I'm sorry it took so long, but there's literally thousands stacked up. Nothing I can do about it. Please, if you're still here, email us again, would you? Send us some more. These are all... This is in the... I flipped over to waiting emails today. Northeast Washington encounter. Steve, what I'm about to share with you occurred approximately in the late summer 2017 in Northeast Washington. My family and I like to camp in a small 100 by 20 yard mountain meadow alongside a creek running through a cedar grove. This is the highest up-dispersed camp spot of this particular water drainage. On the second morning of camping, while my wife and 2 kids walked down the meadow, I was cooking and heard 3 distinct knocks on wood very close to the camp. I looked around for woodpecker, but could see and hear nothing else, so dismissed it. Later that night, my kids roughhoused in the camp trailer and we all went to sleep. I tied my small dog up to the front of the trailer and had opened the trailer's side tilt-out windows before going to bed for the night. At about 4 a.m., I woke in my bed. It was the time of morning that was gray out, and I was wondering why I woke up. I lay there for about 10 minutes listening for my dog, birds, anything, but I could hear nothing outside. I distinctly heard a large 20 to 30 pound boulder being thrown into the 1 foot deep creek below the trailer about 20 yards away. You could hear it strike another boulder underwater. I then grabbed my pistol and listened for another 30 minutes until it got a bit lighter out, and then I went outside to check my dog. She would not come out from under the trailer, and I had to drag her out by her cable. Fast forward another year in the same location. We had parked our camp trailer at one end of the meadow, and the trailer door was 10 yards from the bush with the campfire right behind our trailer. I'd placed a kerosene lantern on a pole between the fire and the camp trailer door. My wife and two small children had just gone to bed, and I was talking with my older stepfather, who had come up to camp with us. While I was looking at him, we both heard a loud grunt/huff and foot stomp, not 25 feet from us, coming from the direction of the bush. Instantly, I grabbed my SKS, which is hanging on the tree next to me, and my stepfather had a spotlight, which he had turned on and swung around to where the noise originated from. A little bit of wind here. You'd think these thermals start to tone down with the sun going down. Turn around to be a big bull out behind me. I had the rifle loaded, but had not chambered a round, so being left-handed, I placed my right hand on the bolt but did not rack it so I could listen. We both then walked closer to the bush, which was dense, but you could see into it in spots. Behind the bushes, the terrain climbed sharply and the weather had made the leaves dry. We could see and hear nothing, but I had expected something elk or moose sized to be there. Nothing was there. After looking from the meadow into the bushes for about 30 minutes. Steve, beyond this camp spot up the creek is the last valley before the peak of the mountain. I know something lives there. As I think you mentioned before, the natives attributed certain things to Sasquatch, including the word humbling. That they are, and I also suspect they can, determine our intent. I believe that absolutely. As far as my intent, I think the Sasquatch is in the same situation we are in, but I think most people do not understand that. Let me explain. I recognize that the majority of the people as a group are preyed upon by a smaller group of people who are crazy, sociopathic, psychopathic, call them what you will. In sum, that smaller group of people prey upon the unknowing majority of humans. The last thing this dangerous minority wants is for the public to understand that. For if the public did understand that, then they could come to the conclusion that they must become the predator themselves and not to remain the prey. I suspect the Sasquatch people already understand that fact, and I would not put it past the powers that be to exploit the Sasquatch people's abilities in order to maintain their control over us. Of course they would. As my good partner, an ex-Alaskan guide used to say, the possibilities are endless. Best regards to you and your family, Caseman Theodore Thompson. Mr. Thompson, I absolutely appreciate you, my man. And again, I apologize, it might have taken a while to find your email, but we got it. I hope you're still here. I hope you're still here with us. Yep, there is a small group of people causing a lot of death on good people in the world today, isn't there? And for quite some time, and they need to be stopped. By us. This next email is titled Story and Question. Hi Steve, I'd like to thank you for what you're doing. It looks like all of your videos take place inside of a Bob Ross painting. How freaking awesome that must be. I stumbled on your website one day while watching grizzly stories on YouTube. Been watching ever since. I spend quite a bit of time in the woods. I'm an avid archery hunter and enjoy fishing. I'm in my 40s and I live in Pennsylvania. About 10 years ago, on the last day of spring gobbler season, I was on top of one of the mountains that overlooked a large hollow. Ooh, that's a big gust. It's like the wind's getting stronger. Sorry, you guys. This holler has many mountains and smaller hollows that surround it, and the hollow stretches about 7 miles. wind. It was late afternoon, early evening, and I had a gobbler answering me from the small bench below me. It was the last day, time was running short, and I was becoming slightly impatient, lol. Being careful not to overcall and listening intently, it eventually became clear that the turkey was not going to climb the mountain up to where I was. Oh well, I had fun anyway. While I was listening to what the turkey's next move was going to be, from across the hollow, on the bottom of the next mountain, I heard a very loud, very long, very guttural scream. I would say it lasted for about 7 to 8 seconds. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard by far. Completely caught off guard by the sound, my attention was now on whatever made that sound, and I had pretty much given up all hope in the turkey. 10 to 15 seconds after the scream ended, it happened again. This time I was more confused and listened closely. As the scream started this second time, I must have heard at least 25 coyotes start yipping and howling and carrying on. Some sounded as close as 150 yards, while some sounded half a mile or further away. I never heard anything else that evening, but to this day I'll never forget the sound I heard. The best way I could describe it is to picture a really pissed off cross between King Kong and the Hulk. It was starting to get dark and I was hearing movement all around me, probably the coyotes, and was starting to get an uneasy feeling. A feeling to leave, lol. Once I got home, I immediately started scouring the internet trying to find the sound that I heard. The only thing close that I found was on a Sasquatch website. I was sure there had to be a better explanation of the sound I heard than that. I only told a handful of friends and family what I heard and what happened that night. It was pretty clear I wasn't going to be able to tell more people than that because even some of my friends and family thought I was crazy. One of the people I did tell was my uncle. Fortunately, he didn't laugh. He was pretty excited and curious and wanted to explore further. There's a small native trout fishing stream that runs up through those mountains, and I said that we could go take the fishing rods for a long walk and make a day fishing. As I said, I enjoy fishing, and I didn't actually expect anything unusual to happen again, so we went. We were several miles up the stream. I'd fish some holes ahead of my uncle. Then he would go around me and do the same, over and over, etc. He was maybe 50 yards out ahead of me, just out of sight, when I saw him heading back my way, and he said, "That's as far as I can go. You can go further if you want, but I won't go any further than this." I, of course, asked why. Quote, "I just had a really strong feeling come over me that said we can't go on any further. We shouldn't be here." I myself didn't experience this feeling, but I understood and agreed to head back. Just as soon as I had finished fishing the one small hole I was at, he agreed and waited a few minutes for me to finish up. And he asked me, "Do you hear that?" I said, "No. Do I hear what?" He said, "There it is again." I couldn't hear anything over the current of the small stream that I was standing next to. I moved away from the stream about 10 feet, and then I did hear it. It was nothing like the sound I had heard while turkey hunting. This sound wasn't very loud at all, and it was higher pitched, softer. We heard the softer sounding whoop sound 5 or 6 times coming from 80 to 100 yards away from the base of one of those mountains along the stream. The bottom, around the stream, was pretty thick and hard to really see anything very far away, so we only heard the sound. We didn't see anything. After we heard the final whoop, me still thinking it had to be some type of bird that I'd never heard before, we heard the cracking sound of a tree breaking and crashing to the ground. And it come from the same spot as the whoop. It could have been a huge tree or we would have seen something. We only heard it. Either way, that was enough for both of us and we proceeded to head back to the vehicle. Several weeks went by and I still didn't tell anyone else what happened. Then I got a phone call from an old friend who was completely unaware of any of my recent experiences. He asked me if I was interested in going fishing with him, sure enough, to the same place my uncle and I had been several weeks earlier. My response was this, quote, "Sure, I'd love to go up there. It's always a good time and you never know what might happen." He says, "You're telling me. The last time I was up there, something was throwing rocks at me from up on one of those banks. I was beside myself, stunned." He told me his story and I shared mine, and it turns out His experience and mine both happened in the same spot along the stream. I'll let him tell his story with you if he wishes. Not mine to share. And take note, we did go fishing, had a great time, and had no incidents. Now it's mid to late summer, and I get another phone call, and this one's from my dad. He, being one of the people that I shared my experience with, that didn't laugh at me. And he tells me about a fellow that he works with that just happens to own some ground on the top of one of those mountains I spent so much time fishing below. He said he'd been riding his ATV out on his land and saw several big trees that he had previously cut down for firewood, all standing up, leaning against another big tree, a giant teepee shape. He said they were too big for anyone to move them without some sort of heavy equipment. And there was no evidence of anything like that on his land. That's all I really know about that. Nothing strange or out of the ordinary had happened to me since then until this past archery season. A little windy. I was going way off the beaten path. That's what I do. Driving my Jeep down an old logging trail, miles from civilization, and probably 40 miles from that range of mountains that I had the unexplained experiences years ago. When I saw a small blue light flying down the bank through the Mount Laurel from my left. It was lightning fast and seemed to disappear right in front of my Jeep. It was still an hour before daylight, so I stuck it out, being so bright. It all happened so fast. Probably only saw it for about 1 to 2 seconds, just enough time for me to slam on the brakes so I didn't hit whatever it was. Then it was gone. I was perplexed as to what it was, but was anxious to get to my spot, so I kept driving. A mile or so further down the trail, I saw it again. But this time it was on my right side and appeared to be up in the trees. Again, I only saw it for a second or two before it was gone. I thought about those lights for a few weeks before I convinced myself that they had have to have been a reflection on my windshield from the lighted nocks I had of my arrow quiver on my back seat. But the more I thought about it, the arrows were on the passenger side back seat the entire time. There's no way the reflection would be on the left side of my windshield one time and all the way on the right side the next time. I have no idea. Coincidentally, I did harvest a nice buck that morning. Perhaps the lights were a good omen. Who knows? Thanks again, Steve. I really enjoy watching your channel. I'm anxiously waiting and hoping for the answers to why we're not being told the truth. I wish you the best and all the luck in the world. P.S. I remember a few years back watching a video that I've heard you mention of a female archery hunter that had filmed a predator-like semi-invisible being watching her in the woods. I cannot find that video anymore. It's like they've removed it somehow from the internet. Am I crazy, or is the video really gone? Thanks again. Please don't share my name. I got you, man. I don't know exactly where that is. To be honest, that was a while ago. Somebody's going to mention where it is in the comment section below, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Now, it's funny because I'm reading about the bright light he's watching hunting. In the back of my mind, I'm picturing what I would do if one came zipping along right now, right here. That'd be a little weird, wouldn't it? Getting close to the witching hour. I'm gonna squeak out one more, I think. See how long this is. This one's too long. Excuse me. How about this one? This one's pretty long too. I'm gonna go for it. Mark this as red. Why Sasquatch information is being suppressed? There is a war on humanity going on. It's the title of this email. Share my name at the end and anything else in this email. Steve, been watching your videos, binge watching them actually for the last few weeks. I don't have a Sasquatch story, but I have some information that is very relevant to the Sasquatch situation. It'll take a bit to lay out, but I'm sure you'll find it enriching. Today's video on March 1st, Angry and a Caution, was very powerful. The powerful part being when you were talking personally about what is going on in the world. I felt compelled to chime in. First off, you're not babbling, not to me. You're talking very clearly and profoundly. I've been studying the occult for years now, and hear me out. The word occult simply means hidden from sight. Occultism is the study of hidden knowledge. This occult knowledge can be used for evil, the dark occult, or for good, the light occult. I'll quickly share some of what is contained in this occult knowledge, hence I will de-occult it. It must be stated right here, you are correct. There are dark people running this planet, dark occultists. The dark occultist uses this hidden knowledge as a power differential against those that do not know it, those they wish to control. For if those they wanted to control knew this hidden knowledge, they would be uncontrollable. This knowledge is the foundation of all religions, of all the mystery schools. That said, here's some of that esoteric knowledge. Wisdom is not what we know, but what we do with what we know, our actions. Our actions are what these dark occultists must control. This is where rights are rooted in. Our rights refer directly and in exact proportion to our actions. Our rights are anything that does not cause harm to another sentient being. Thus, wrongs are wrong action. That which is wrong to do is the opposite of our rights. A wrong is anything that does cause harm to another sentient being. All wrongs are a form of theft, the taking of something that does not belong to you. A wrong is the initiation of force causing harm, or in other words, violence. It needs to be stated that self-defense is never violent. If someone initiates harm unto you, then you have the right to defend against such actions, up to and including the taking of the offender's life. These are the true 7 deadly sins. Murder, the taking of life that does not belong to you. Stealing, the taking of property that does not belong to you. Willfully lying, the taking of someone's ability to make an informed decision. Assault, the taking of someone's bodily security. Trespass, the taking of someone's security in their living space. Rape, the stealing of someone's sexuality. Coercion, the stealing of someone's free will, decision-making. What this dark ruling class has done is they have obfuscated this truth from those they wish to control. They have occulted it to their benefit. The above rights and wrongs are natural laws governing the consequences of the behavior, the actions of those beings with the ability to know the difference. Beings with free will, or in other words, humans. Rights, and thus wrongs, can be definitely known. No one needs to believe me. It can be observed to be the case, to be true. This is moral objectivism. This is the law of God, /universe, /nature, /creation, whatever you want to call it. The dark ruling class has convinced humanity throughout the millennia that there is no moral objectivity, that rights are granted by an authority, meaning other men. This is moral relativism, that the truth cannot be definitely known, that men get to make it up as they go. The monarchs of times past would decree their right to rule. Over time, people become hip to this and could see through this lie. The monarchs of old didn't go away. These families just went into the background and created a front from which they can rule from. This front is known as government. Interestingly enough, government comes from the Latin, quote, gubernare, end quote, to control, and to mente, the mind control. These rulers just made a new monarchy called an oligarchy, which is what government is. The illusion of freedom in a democracy is just that, an illusion. Democracy has no bearing in moral objectivism. Excuse me. It is morally relativistic. It is morally relativistic and run on man's laws. Democracy. Democracy is mob rule, the majority dictating to the minority, with no concern for individual rights. This, however, makes the people think they are in control. The required illusion to have the people go along with a system of slavery, but ultimately the ruling class runs governments and the laws. I should note the USA was formed as a constitutional republic, not a democracy. The Constitution is a special document because it attempted to enshrine these natural rights, although this document is not what gives any person their rights. They have them as a birthright. I had to briefly lay that out to make the point backing up what I've heard you say. I will paraphrase, but you have mentioned that our purpose here in this life is to learn for ourselves, to make our own decisions, but that we have passed that off to authorities. Your intuition aligns with the truths outlined above. Interesting. It is profound when you learn that our actions individually and collectively dictate the type of world we live in. This brings us to the natural law that we will manifest what we put forth. Right action, based in knowledge and understanding, leads to freedom. If our actions as a collective of individuals were right, we would live on a planet of plenty, peace, love, and freedom. Wrong action, based in ignorance and confusion, leads to slavery. If our actions as a collective of individuals were wrong, we would live on a planet of scarcity, fear, death, slavery. Tell me which our planet reflects now, especially now it is so obvious. We are a morally relativistic society worldwide. This has been the modus operandi for millennia, to keep the people from understanding their rights. Instead, legal systems, man's laws become the norm, convincing people that what is legal is what is right. Nothing can be further from the truth, even though some laws do happen to be right. But let me reiterate that actions are the third part of a trinity of being. Actions are based on a person's understanding, which is in turn based on the information someone takes in. Information, understanding, action, wisdom. As you brought up in today's video, number one, the mainstream media lies to the people. Number two, as someone gets hugely popular, they likely get a talking to. Number three, you yourself do not follow the mainstream media because you're aware of the lying. Number four, you quit listening to Joe Rogan when you detected the obvious censorship going on his platform. I used to listen to Rogan too and stopped for the same reason. What is the common link between all these points? The control of information. Why? To ultimately control a person's understanding and thus a person's actions. You clearly do not like your actions controlled, and that is because you have taken in a different information set than the general public, as have I. This is why information is so paramount to control. This is why the dark ruling class control the media. Information needs to be controlled, or you lose control of people, because in the end you lose control of their actions. Fear is an effective tool to get a person to take in the information you want them to take in, which sends them down the path to being a controllable, moral relativist. I hope I explained that well enough, because it applies to everything from COVID to Sasquatch to 9/11 to whatever else you care to lay it over. Herein lies your answer as to the question you have postulated, where you have wondered what it is that makes people act like sheep, hiding from people what their rights are, and thus rights of others. Do this through the control of information using fear. Wind. I hope it is already becoming clear this explains what is going on with COVID. Fear, thus leading to propaganda, information, thus leading to an erroneous understanding, leading to wrong action. A little too much wind. Sorry. How do we know this situation is wrong? The seventh deadly sin, coercion. This whole thing is coercion. There would be no pandemic if it wasn't being enforced violently by the state and all the order followers. Going back to step one, there would be no pandemic if everyone stopped watching their TV and taking in that information fear. Right? Finally ending with Sasquatch. People who have been brought up to believe in authority are in a fearful state. Why do people get ridiculed, harassed, and harmed, fired from jobs, etc., for telling others about the experiences they have had with Sasquatch? Because those they tell have lost the ability to think for themselves. If the authority hasn't said it or acknowledged it, then it is nonsense. People harassing and harming others, assault for telling their experience, are people who have no understanding of rights. These are people who are in that state of fear, as shown is the case of people who are under the control by this dark ruling class. As you have said, Steve, people react in these ways out of fear. They do not want to acknowledge this might be the reality. Like anything else, then, the Sasquatch situation, how the authorities and the people who believe in those authorities react to it, is all about control of the people, starting with the control of information. It's very interesting how you have mentioned that, quote, people need to get out of the fear and tell their stories, as well as get back out in nature, end quote. And this is exactly right. In other words, you are saying people need to take back control from the authorities, which would include authority of Sasquatch itself, right? Whether from the side of the storyteller or the person listening to the story. Looking into and questioning about 9/11 leads to people who cannot be controlled. Looking into and questioning about COVID-19 leads to people who cannot be controlled. Looking into and questioning about the Federal Reserve and private central banking leads to people who cannot be controlled. Looking into and questioning about our true spiritual nature leads to people who cannot be controlled. Looking into and questioning about Sasquatch leads to people who cannot be controlled. I hope I've done a decent job explaining the underlying principles, tying all these seemingly separate things together. Maybe Sasquatch is indeed a metaphysical teacher in the most profound sense. And no, you're not babbling. Give yourself more credit. We are in a spiritual war. Good versus evil. Thanks, Steve. Ian Wayland. Feel free to use my name. You know, it's finally the last few paragraphs in that I realized I have read that before. And I got no problems reading it again. There's some very good messages in there. A lot of people may benefit from listening to. I got to get moving. I sure appreciate all these people emailing in, I'll tell you what. I hope everybody listens and does their own due diligence and also listens. Listen to what this person just said. Listen. Take from it what you will or leave it, but listen to those words and look into it, right? He made a lot of sense. Sometimes my mouth, I have troubles reading sometimes. I have no feeling right here. I don't know if I mentioned before, but I got no feeling at all right there, and I got a steel plate right there. Yes, from a fight. Whatever. Stupid story from the younger days, but I got a steel plate right here, and I got no feeling right there, and sometimes it's tough for me to speak smoothly at times. All right, witching hour. Go for a walk up and around this corner. See if maybe there's some elk there. See if maybe there was some elk there. See what's happening. And maybe if everything works out tomorrow, I could take you guys up on the mountain with us tomorrow and show you around. Maybe even I might strap on the GoPro on a strap and hit record and you can watch the action. See what happens. Share my story at howtohunt.com. Get your experiences shared somewhere. Speak out loud. Speak honestly. And don't be afraid. I'll be back later.